People who engage in wrongdoing cannot escape the consequences of their actions. In today's video, we are going to use a character from the Samaritan known as Inspector Bembe. Inspector Bembe is a powerful leader. He's the Inspector General of Police, but he's accused of so many things that are wrong. One, he suggests threatening of reporters and editors after the Samaritan app begins exposing leader secrets. That is on page 22. He even proposes banning the Samaritan app by passing a new bylaw, which he promises to enforce immediately. That is on page 27. On page 38, we see that he's accused of countless cases of corruption, human rights violation, drug peddling, and extortion. And then on page 41, we are told that he's a member of a shadowy gang called Ghettoboyz that robs citizens across Maracas Municipality. He builds his Mandingo Golf Club, hotel, and private home on public land belonging to Maracas University. The evidence is on page 40. Inspector Bembe funds the hotel with daily bribes extorted by his officers from motorists. The hotel is even nicknamed Motorists Highway Hotel. That's on page 41. He transforms the entire municipal police force into his personal bribery machine. Officers collect bribes from both guilty and innocent citizens instead of enforcing law and order. That is on page 41. Bembe deploys Ghettoboyz members and undercover police to help Mayor Mosi defeat a vote of no confidence. That is on page 45. He conspires with Mayor Mosi to blackmail Judge Ian Jeden in order to imprison political rivals. That is on page 48. He plans to fabricate criminal charges against teacher Nicole, stealing school furniture, a computer, or a generator. That is on page 47. He arranges for someone to steal the school generator and then pin the crime on Nicole. Bembe intimidates Nicole, claiming she has a legal and moral duty to obey the mayor and that disobeying him is criminal. That is on page 94. On the same page, you see that he warns Nicole that the Samaritan app threatens powerful people who will destroy her life. He makes false accusations against Nicole that her phone signal was at a murder scene, she stole the school generator, and she is too stubborn and a bad influence on the students. That is page 94 to 95. He violently bangs the table using his gun to intimidate Nicole during the interrogation. That is on page 95 to 96. He hits Nicole on the face with a bunch of peppers to force her to stop the Samaritan app. That is on page 97. Then he orders Nicole's arrest. She's handcuffed and dragged on the floor. 95 to page 98. He tells Nicole that when he personally handles an arrest, it is as serious as death. That is intimidation on page 96. He also assigns a contingent of police officers and Ghettoboyz members to support Mayor Mosi's Red Eagle network. That is on page 101. And lastly, he conspires with Mayor Mosi in blackmailing Judge Ian Jeden in order to try and suppress the Samaritan app. Page 105 to 122. Now, what are the consequences of this wrongdoing? The Samaritan app exposes his secret wealth, and people begin to openly question how he acquired money to build Mandingo Golf Club. That is on page 26. He reacts with horror, describing the exposure as their worst nightmare. Still on page 26. He warns Mayor Mosi of a high likelihood of his own untimely death. Page 37. The exposure severely affects his health. His blood sugar becomes unstable. He drifts into a coma and he suffers from constant anxiety, which he describes as the willies on page 38. He shows a dreadful expression when he learns that a lobby group plans to reclaim his illegally occupied land for Maracas University. Page 40. He trembles, breathes heavily, becomes hard of hearing, and panics at the thought of losing his entire life savings invested in the hotel and the home. He repeatedly tells Mayor Mosi that they are doomed. That is on page 99. He declares that he would rather die than become an inmate or a homeless person on page 99. In despair, he cries out loud, "Lord, have mercy on me," believing these are his last days. As a diabetic, he says he cannot survive even 1 week in prison. His stomach runs constantly from fear since the Samaritan app arrived. That is on page 99. He is badly embarrassed when the crowds from all walks of life turn up in court to support Nicole. The judge dismisses the fabricated case and sets her free. That is on page 100. He becomes extremely jittery and anxious about possible prosecution. That is on page 123 to 124. The whole town comes to a standstill during Nicole's court appearance. That is on page 125. Bembe is forced to publicly apologize to Nicole, admitting, "I have realized the mistake was mine. I am very sorry." That is on page 131 to 132. When the anti-corruption officer, Tajo, arrives to arrest them, Bembe staggers and almost falls while seeking for cover. That is on page 138. And he is finally handcuffed and bundled out in disgrace. Indeed, those who engage in wrongdoing cannot escape the consequences of their actions. Follow me on all social media platforms. My name is Wafula Wekati. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel.